Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training. And welcome to episode 10 of season 2 of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
So, Sophie, give us an update. What's going on in Dogland?
Well, since it's been so nice out in the 70s around here, I've been biking more. And so I took Twiggy on a bike ride the other day. And for the most part, we've never really encountered anyone that I've had to worry about. Like, we encounter a lot of dogs, a lot of people. But definitely this time we encountered kind of a tricky situation. And I'm very vigilant when I'm out there, making sure, if I see someone ahead of the trail, I let them know I have a dog. And if they're okay with dogs, and if they're not, then I grab Twiggy and I bring her to the side until they pass. This time there was another guy with his dog off leash biking. And for the most part, when I do encounter other dogs and someone's biking with them, they're usually pristinely behaved. This dog was not. I warned the guy and I was like, hey, I have a dog. Is your dog friendly? And before the guy could even hear me, his dog was on top of our space. And Twiggy read that dog's body language and took off in the other direction. And I just let her run because, she sees stuff that I don't see. And I knew because the dog looked like a pitty Mastiff German Shepherd mix, I'm going to say. I wasn't worried that he was going to chase her down and, she wasn't going to be able to get away.
She's far more athletic and faster than he was.
Way more athletic than faster than him. I honestly was surprised he actually had him out running, biking in the woods.
Yeah, well, he sounds like a bonehead anyway.
Yeah.
And who brings a dog like that off leash in the woods? I swear.
Well, these are the cases where I get really frustrated because as you know, I put a lot of time and effort towards making sure Twiggy's super responsive and respectful of other people on the trail and isn't going to invade anyone's space. Or, there's people who don't like dogs out there and don't want a random dog running up on them. So I'm very conscious of other people in their space. So I get really frustrated when, I've put all my time into my dog to get them to this place.
And you're a bonehead.
And this guy just comes along with his dog off leash, no collar, no leash.
No control.
No control over his dog, no recall. This dog's a big, powerful breed, and my dog easily could have gotten hurt. And plus, we bred her. So it's like another layer of concern.
So what if you're walking along in that woods with your Maltese on a leash? Mm-hmm. I mean, what the heck is wrong with people? I get so disgusted by that. Mm-hmm. I mean... But don't get worried, audience. Twiggy was fine.
Twiggy was fine. She took off in the other direction and disappeared over the edge of a ridge. So I couldn't see her anymore. And then when the other dog came back to his owner, he kind of chased her and then kind of gave up because she ran so fast and came back to the owner. And the owner's like, oh, well, my dog's a little funny with other dogs. So once again, why do you have your dog off leash with no control over him? And he's not good with other dogs in the middle of the woods, but whatever. And he goes, is your dog friendly? And I wouldn't be asking if your dog was friendly if mine wasn't, but whatever. That's another time. Well, actually, we're going to talk about a little bit about that today. But, I was like, well, she's intact. So other dogs tend to be funny with her, trying to kind of give him a hint. I don't want my dog to
didn't
meet
even
your
know
dog.
What that meant.
Yeah. So anyways, because he had no leash, no collar, no control over his dog, he had to actually lift his 90-pound dog up in the air. And then I used my e-collar to recall Twiggy back when it was safe. And I, have it's kind of like a flexi leash collar built into her. It's like a flexi collar built into her collar. I don't know if that makes sense. And so I just took that and took her leash and I just walked her past the dog and we continued on in the woods and it was fine. But because I took all the precautions to make sure my dog was okay, not because this guy just got luck free. What if I had, I don't know, anything could have happened.
50 different things. What if you're afraid of dogs and this dog comes bounding up to you? Mm-hmm. It's just, 50 different ways that pisses me off. Mm-hmm. Whenever I have my dogs off leash and I get anxious about them seeing other dogs off leash, I try to console myself with, well, no one would be stupid enough to have their dog off leash if they weren't dog friendly.
Yeah.
But people stagger me with their stupidity.
Yeah.
Stupidity is always brought to a new level when I'm out around people. So I'm glad she was fine. You were kind of upset when you came back, but I was like, it sounds like Twiggy handled it perfectly.
Yeah, it's more of just like, it's frustrating that I'm very conscious of like other people's boundaries and social cues. And I really try to make sure like I do the right thing. So I get really frustrated when I took all these steps and did all this training with Twiggy to make sure she was perfect.
And you didn't do the bare minimum.
And he didn't do anything. And on top of it, you make other dogs like pit bulls and mastiffs and German shepherds, like whatever your dog was, you make them look bad because you have no control over this powerful breed that you decided to get, and you didn't do any precautions for this breed. And this is why a lot of dogs get bad names, because you people don't put in the effort and the time and don't understand the powerful breed that you have. No matter what, Twiggy would have never hurt another, she wouldn't hurt any other dog. Like, she's not capable of really hurting another dog severely. That dog is, though. That dog could easily kill another dog. And you're out here, no leash, no collar, no nothing, and your dog doesn't have good recall, and he just literally chased after my dog, and then you have the audacity of giving me a fist bump. Like, dude, like, whatever. Like, I didn't scream or yell because there's no point. There's no point in teaching that guy anything, because he's just a bonehead, and he's going to come back and do it again. So now I'm going to have to be even more vigilant.
No, she sounded like she did fine. And when she sees that dog again, she'll do the same thing, and it will all be fine.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of a good segue into our topic today. Our topic today is dog to dog, dog to human, nonverbal communication. So body language, reading body language, right? Which is part of what you're talking about here. Yeah. But also, in a broader sense, is my frustration with people who don't respect dog body language. A lot of people just don't know. Most people just don't know what the dog is communicating. Some people kind of have an idea of what a dog is communicating, like, dude, I don't want you in my space, kind of anxious, submissive kind of stuff. And they sort of know what that means, but they sort of go in there anyway and grab their dog and give them hugs and kisses and don't really care that their dog isn't into it at the moment. And most of the time that works out just fine. Some of the time you get a dog bite, right? So it's kind of like this dopey guy, right? He sort of seems to fly by the seat of his pants and just hope that it all works out, right? Do all the wrong things, and chances are you'll be fine. Of course, there's a chance that you won't be fine, or someone else won't be fine because of your carelessness. So I think this is kind of a good segue into this topic. Dog body language, of course, we've all known all along that dogs are trying to communicate with us, even back in the day when I was your age in training. Of course, we knew of dog body language. But what we know now in the year 2024 is very different than what we knew in, say, 1994. It's a completely, almost new world of understanding what dogs are trying to communicate. And also a new respect on honoring what they're trying to communicate. And this whole movement towards consent, right? Your dog consenting to being pet, or whatever, you encroaching on their space, they sort of have to consent. And that's all dog body language. Generally, people who understand dog body language are pretty good at human body language as well. It kind of goes hand in hand. But again, you can understand it and still not respect it and go right in. Thoughts?
Immediately what I think of is most of the time the people who, when we're walking on our walks and who encroach on our space, we give them a whole bunch of human body language of, we don't want your dog to come in our space.
Like really obvious human
stuff.
Nonverbal communication.
Like making extreme space all the way on the
turning
edge
my
with
back
the dog.
to them.
Turning your back to them.
Not making eye contact. Turning away.
Not responding to them, talking to you.
When they ask questions, completely not responding.
And still, it's like over and over and over again. And then, of course, when you say something, they call you the B word, right. Or, you're the bad guy because you were disrespectful to them.
You're unfriendly. You're a bitch. You're this. You're that.
I tried not to say anything to you, and you didn't see any of the social cues that I was giving you, that my dog is not friendly, that I am in training with my dog, that I'm working on my dog holding themselves together so they don't
just
react to your
not
dog.
interested in interacting with you.
Or that. And people still don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the eternal question for me, right? Is it that they don't see it? Or is it that they're ignoring it? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Is it that they're just focused on the dog, so they're not looking at my body language? Possible. My back is to them, so I don't know really what they're looking at. I suppose if we had a third party filming the whole interaction, maybe we could get some of those answers. Yeah, that always surprises me, that people
can't read other people's body language. Like, I get not reading dogs' body language because, you and me have a very particular eye. Like, whenever we go to clients' houses and we're like trying to point out stuff, the clients will be like, oh, I had no idea that, that ear twitch was him thinking, or him lowering his head and smelling stuff was him trying to self-regulate. Like, I didn't think about that stuff. But like basic human on human body language, where I'm not making eye contact with you, not responding to you, putting a lot of space between you and the dog. Like, I feel like you're human. You should be able to get some of this basic, this is like elementary body language that we're giving you, and you don't. Like, that's my mystery behind it.
I hate to bring race into this, but I think that's a big part of it too, and probably age. So I think that the younger you are, the more, I'm completely spitballing here, maybe you're more respectful of people's body language and people's space and what they want. There's a lot of white privilege that goes on where you just go right in, right? You just go right into the situation. You don't really care. You're not really conscious of what other people want when they're asking for space or don't want to interact with you. Coming from a place of white privilege, you might just bully yourself right into that space anyway. Certainly, the older generation is going to have a different upbringing, been socialized differently than younger generations. So I wonder how much of that plays into it. We, by and large, encounter white people on our walk.
Yeah.
Older white people.
Yep.
Because we walk during the day, so we have a lot of retirees that will be out there walking their dogs or whatever. A lot of older white men. I wonder how much that plays in it. And that's not so much a criticism as a curiosity of mine. Like, I wonder how much that is a part of the way they were socialized and brought up, and how they understand the world might be affecting that. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. We don't come across a lot of people of color on our walks for whatever reason, except on the weekends when a lot of people from the city come up. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah.
Because that group of people tend to be very dog focused or very dog avoidant. It's one or the other.
Yeah,
it's
one
not
or the other. And for the most part with the city people is, they're doing their own thing. Like, they're not really, they're so used to just cutting in front of dogs on the street and stuff that they don't think that I'm creating all this space and you want to go directly into the woods, so therefore you're going to cut directly in front of me and not give me any space whatsoever. That's like a normal city thing. So that's
right.
like being socialized in the city. So I don't really get offended during those moments. I just kind of let them do their thing, because I'm just like, you're not even consciously thinking, because you're so used to being in a packed city,
right? Having no space. So and we're very suburban, so that's where we're socialized, right? And there's all this space, and so it's frustrating when people don't take advantage of the space. Yeah. So there's all of these, coming from a cultural point of view, coming from a societal point of view, a generational point of view, all of this. I don't know why I'm going off on this tangent, but I try to make sense of these things. And I wonder how much all of those things are involved in their decision to continue to move into our space when we are clearly indicating to them non-verbally that we're not interested. Or even worse, like we're asking them not to without saying anything. And then, of course, as soon as you do, you're the bitch. You're unfriendly and the bitch. And you make them feel ashamed, right? It's a shame response for them. They're embarrassed that they didn't listen to your cues. And you now had to tell them like a child, please do not approach me. Then they get mad at you.
Yep.
I think probably some of our audience is going, yep, happens to me all the time, and other part of our audience is going, why is she making this about race? But we all come, I guess the reason I try to think about this is because if I can understand where they're coming from, and it's not a place of being a dick, I can be more generous
and not get so upset.
And everybody comes at it from their own life experience. And it would be interesting to maybe understand that a little better from my point of view. So maybe I could just be a nicer person. Not a nicer person, a friendlier person maybe.
I mean, I feel like we really do try. And I think my biggest technique, what we've learned over the years, is anytime I'm walking and someone wants to meet my dog, or they try to encroach on my space, or they try to touch my dog, I always go, "Oh, I'm sorry. She's in training and my trainer would kill me." And blame it on somebody else, because then they don't have this like innate shame response to like go after you. And I always blame it on my trainer, even though I'm the trainer. So I'm really blaming it on myself, but they don't know that.
Well, interesting. I took I took Tula to Tractor Supply. The local Tractor Supply did not have my dog food. We get a subscription. So they deliver the food, and they were out of it. So I had to drive a half an hour to the local Tractor Supply, and I thought, well, it's the afternoon, let me make a training session out of it. So I threw Tula in the car because I have not taken her out into the world in that kind of situation where she's in like a store or Home Depot or something like that in quite a while. She's 7 months old now, and I wanted to see what her reaction was. I've done a little bit of that here and there for the last 5 months with her.
When it was convenient, you always
but
took
it's
her.
not something I did regularly. But it's a good gauge as a trainer, as an owner, to sort of see where they are developmentally. And see if maybe you have some holes in your training or your socialization, your desensitization program that maybe you need to focus on. So I said, hey, I'll throw her in the car and see how she does. So we drove a half an hour, got out at Tractor Supply. She trotted right in the store next to my big, loud, cranky, cart with the wobbly wheel, which was surprising because most of our dogs would be quite
freak out.
Shy. They don't like that noise, and they generally won't want to walk next to the cart. She was like, no problem. She trotted right in there, misconfident, which I was very pleased to see. And of course, the first person we see is a young woman who works there and says, is she friendly, before she approaches her. And I kind of stumbled with my answer because the answer is yes, but not necessarily I want you to come and say hello to her. So I was like, oh, blah, blah, very inarticulate. I think I ended up saying, yes, she's friendly. I don't know if she wants to say hi to you. Let's see if she does. Something like to that effect. And she sort of approached her with her hand out, which is very typical of people, right? Not a way we would approach a dog, not the way we encourage people to approach a dog, but it's been so drilled into us here in the United States that that's how you approach a dog.
You always put your hand out, let them smell your hand.
Not a great way to approach a dog.
Face to face.
Right.
Yeah.
So she sort of bent down a little bit and put her hand out, and Tula did exactly what Tula does, which is she crouches down and she backs up slightly, but mostly she crouches down and sticks her nose out, and we'll sniff their hand, and they can then scratch her under the chin. And that's her way. That's how she has learned to greet people. That's the way she feels comfortable. If that young woman would have sat on the floor, she would have probably barked at her, and then within 10 seconds would be in her lap licking her face. I am fine with all of that. Like, that's the way she figures out, that's the way it's comfortable to her. I'm good with that. However, when people see that, they don't interpret the same thing.
No, they go, oh, you need to socialize your dog more.
Right. They say, well, this young woman was like, oh, okay, I guess you don't want to say hi to me, and walked away, which was fine. We continued into the store, and as we're going to the dog food aisle, 2 more people do the same thing. And she's in a barking phase, which I know drives you insane.
Yes.
And she has this squeaky bark, which is interesting. She's the squeakiest, like still a real puppy bark.
We call her the kazoo because she sounds like a kazoo, just screaming.
Yeah. And barking, again, is her way of expressing that she's either excited
or uncomfortable
or anxious, right? So I know that because I know my dog, right? So I know it's not an aggression thing. It's her way of going, whoa, 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 I'm a little overstimulated, a little bit unsure. I've got dogs barking upstairs right now. So I'm okay with it, but people are not, which I find so frustrating. And I can't blame them because they don't know this dog. They're not dog trainers. A couple of people did the same thing with the hand, and she wasn't really interested. Then we went into the dog food aisle, and there was a boxer on the other end of the aisle. And as soon as she saw the boxer, I knew she was going to bark. She doesn't like high energy dogs. They make her nervous. And the boxer's like literally jumping, like bouncing.
It's a boxer.
Yeah. Literally bouncing up and down at the end of its leash. And I said out loud, for that person's edification as well, but I was saying it to Tula. I said, you don't have to meet that dog. You're all good. And I grabbed the dog food. I let her bark. I grabbed the dog food, put it in the cart, and we walked away. And as soon as we were out of sight of that dog, she calmed right down.
Yeah.
At that point, I had a phone call. Somebody I had to pick up. So we pulled over to the side of the aisle, and I took this phone call. And I stood there for probably 15 minutes on the phone. And she sort of sat by my side, and many people walked by. She was good. She did not hide behind me. I was pleased with her response, but I knew what body language I was looking at. Everybody was like, "Oh, is she afraid? Why is she afraid? Was she abused?" And I'm literally talking on the phone. Literally talking, not just had the phone up to me, literally talking. People are coming into my space and talking to me and asking me about the dog. And I'm looking at them like I'm literally on the phone.
Yeah.
So I just ignored them, and she seemed to be able to navigate it well enough. But I was actually pleased with her whole trip there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That was the most I could expect from her. She did great. She's a 7-month-old puppy.
Mm-hmm. Australian Shepherd.
Yeah. And she did great. No growling, no lip curls, no hiding behind me. She just was cautious with people she didn't know, but she was willing to try without any encouragement from me. And I was really pleased. But that was if you had sent a film crew in, we could have broken down the nonverbal communication she was displaying, and how basically everyone that walked up to her was ignoring 90% of it.
Yeah, yeah.
The 10% they listened to, they would say there must be something wrong with her. Why is she acting like she doesn't want to see me?
Yeah, every dog loves me.
Right.
Every dog loves me. I love dogs. Let me say hi to your dog.
And something must be wrong with your dog if it's not willing to say hello to a total freaking stranger. Mm-hmm. So, but I knew that going in. So I was in a good headspace through the whole thing. But talking about nonverbal communication, it's an interesting sort of case study on that, right? Yeah. With them not looking at my nonverbal cues, which is, dude, I'm in the middle of something. Don't come up and interrupt me. And her saying, I don't know you. If you stand very still, maybe I'll come and sniff your knee, but I'm not interested in sniffing the hand that you're shoving in my face, So why don't you give an example of how we like to introduce ourselves to new dogs, which happens all the time because training dogs come here for drop-off, and it's literally the first time we meet them.
Yep.
And some of them are very funny with new people.
So, a lot of the times we have paperwork that our clients will fill out. And a lot of the times if it's, a dog that's reactive or not great with new people or stuff, we'll kind of go over the paperwork before we meet the dog.
So that they fill out a dog history report. So we have an idea of the behaviors that we are going to see and that we need to work on.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, we'll see the report, and then we'll see the report, and then we will kind of adjust ourselves based off of what the behavior that they're showing us is. But for the most part, I don't make eye contact with the dog. Mm-hmm. I don't acknowledge the dog. Mm-hmm. I am talking to the human. I'm letting the dog kind of smell around me, completely just pretending kind of treating them like a cat, just completely ignoring them and letting them kind of feel comfortable. And then when they come and if they're sitting down, wagging at me, looking at me, then I will kind of put my hand down and kind of scratch under their chin and stuff, not on top of the head, always under the chin. So for the most part, we ignore the dogs, and I think it freaks the owner out. So when the owner comes out, we literally have to say, we're not ignoring your dog. We're just trying to get a gauge of how they're feeling and stuff. So we don't want to invade their space, and we want it to be as smooth as possible. So don't take offense that we're not saying hi to your dog right now. This is going to be a slow process, especially if it's an Aussie that's coming in with reactivity. The Aussies always fall apart in the beginning. So it's very rare.
Usually in the middle of a hissy fit inside the car.
Yeah, in the car. And sometimes when it's bad, we have to we'll go inside the kennel and be like, you get the dog out of the car in the best way possible for your dog and bring them inside. So we're not creating more chaos with us being outside and them not being good with people and freaking out and jumping on the glass or whatever the case is. But for the most part, we ignore the dogs.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, I think
it seems like we are.
You phrased it better before. We're not ignoring them. Mm-hmm. It seems like maybe to the layperson that we're not ignoring them. What we're really doing is not acknowledging the dog, and we're letting the dog sort of get our scent from a distance, which is usually a few feet away. So, they're usually on a shorter leash, and I usually stay out of leash radius for the first few seconds. So I can gauge whether I feel comfortable piercing that radius,
that
right?
space bubble,
That I'm not going to get bitten out of a dog who is completely in a state at the moment and wouldn't be their fault, right? So I talk to the client and ignore the dog. If I feel comfortable piercing that radius where they can actually physically touch me if they want, I'm doing it with my side, right? I'm sort of sidling up next to them and continuing to
and not making direct eye contact.
Right, I'm not looking at the dog.
People don't realize how much eye contact is so threatening.
Yeah.
I never make eye contact with a dog that I'm meeting. And people are like, oh, what do you don't look at their eyes? You don't look at them? No. I just don't make I don't stare at their soul, into their soul with my eyes. I just kind of like have my eyes around and I'm looking at their body language and I'm looking at their ear placement and I'm looking at if they have hackles up or if they're crouched low or if they're standing tall, or I'm looking at their body. I'm not really looking at their eyes because direct eye contact is very threatening to dogs, and most people don't really see that. Most people, especially,
it's very natural for people to look right
because that's
in
what
the
humans
eyes.
do to
that's
each other.
That's how we're socialized, right?
But dogs do not look. If you ever see two dogs interact, a lot of the times they do not make direct eye contact. With each other.
If they're trying to be non-threatening. If they're trying to be threatening, they are making very hard eye contact. Yeah. It's interesting. We're talking specifically about dogs that come who are uncomfortable when they get out of the car. I have the same protocol when the dogs are super excited to see me.
Yes.
So the Goldens and Doodles that are coming out of the car and completely losing their mind with excitement, I am doing the same thing. I'm staying out of leash radius because I don't want to be jumped on.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be my first experience with this dog, is I'm going to let you jump all over me like a fool because I am going to be upset about that.
Yep.
That's not something that I like. So again, I'm staying out of radius. And if the dog is, and many times the really super sweet ones are completely, all over the place, which is why they come to us.
Yep.
So I'll let them sort of freak out and talk to the owner, and then sidle up sort of parallel to them as we walk inside so that you're not coming directly at them. You're sort of coming up on the side, and I can easily step away if they go to jump on me because I don't like being jumped on, period. It hurts. And I don't want to have to discipline that. I don't want that to be my first interaction with this dog. I don't want them to let them jump on me, and I don't want to discipline it if they do. I want to avoid it completely. And I think we don't talk about avoidance as a training strategy enough. We want to avoid that situation when we're first meeting a dog so that the actual first contact, so to speak, is a much more positive, calm, and less stressful one for the animal. So
otherwise they associate you, this is a lady I jump on. This is a lady where I get excited with. I think a lot of the dogs that are super friendly with people, when they're puppies and they're small, they want to reach and kiss your face, which is kind of where the jumping comes in. And now this is a full-grown lab, and they're jumping all over you. And I don't want that to be my first experience, because now they're going to start associating me with, this is the person I have to jump on. I get to jump on, and then I have to correct them harshly, where if I never let that happen in the first place, I never have to correct that behavior harshly.
I can cultivate that first experience and all other contact experiences. I can cultivate it into a way that's appropriate so that they're getting what they want, which is my attention, in a way that's positive and we can move forward. So that would be how I would recommend anybody. I mean, I can't tell you how much I want to marry people when they approach my dog correctly. I fall totally in love with the person.
Yeah. Or just someone who you can tell is also training their dog, or even if they're not training them, they're putting effort into trying to distract them away from your dog. When you're walking by, I'm immediately yes, queen, yes. Thank you for putting a little bit of effort in there.
Right.
Or at least reading my body language. I love when I hear, when we walk by and the lady, a lady or a guy will say, mainly a lady, will say, they don't want to say hi to you, buddy. Let's keep going. Come on. They're not friendly. They don't want to say hi to you, and first of all, that's letting, kind of, even though the dog kind of understands that, it's not really for the dog, it's for the human to hear.
Human. Yeah.
That, I'm respecting your boundaries.
We do that with kids all the time. Yeah. You'll find that when you're a mother. You do that with your kids all the time. No, we're not going to stand in the aisleway because this gentleman wants to get by.
Yep.
You're not really saying that so much to the child as to indicating to the other adult that I'm trying to move him out of the way.
Yeah.
I respect your
Give me a second.
So
Yeah.
that's something that you'll do when you have kids as well.
You should talk about when you went to that ice cream place with the lab.
Oh God, Mikey.
Yeah. That's a great one because it was like every single, well, there was actually a group of people there. The lady just didn't know how to handle her own dog.
Yeah, no. So we went to this ice cream place up, a little bit north of us for dinner. Not, just to pick up dinner, a couple of hamburgers, me and Gary, and you can sit outside. So we got our sandwiches, and we were sitting out on the picnic table, and there was a group of 3 women, I'd say in their early 50s, who clearly were friends, and they went to get ice cream there, and they were sort of standing outside the door, a little group eating their ice cream. And there next to us was at another picnic table was a young mother with maybe a 4-year-old son. And this older woman, I'd say in her late 60s, walked up with this black lab mix named Mikey. I know that because she said his name about 50 times in the course of 30 seconds. And I'm watching this because that's just what I do. There's just no way around it. As anybody if you're into cars and a cool car walks by or drives by, you're going to be completely invested in the car. That's what you do when you're invested in dogs. So I'm watching this whole interaction, and Mikey, the lab mix, does not want to be there. I come to find out by eavesdropping that he's 2 years old. He's a rescue. She hasn't had him that long. And he is in a state of complete meltdown. Just literally physically shaking, whining, panting.
Literally have an anxiety attack.
Right. So panting is a sign of stress.
Yep.
It can also, of course, be trying to cool off.
Or like panting but for me, it's always like some sort of form of self-regulation, right? So even if they're panting, they're trying to self-regulate their literal body.
Right. But there's actually tongue body language.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right. So a dog who is panting out of stress is going to have their lips pulled back.
And it's like a wide tongue, like
their eyes are generally going to be large. Mm-hmm. You're going to sometimes see the whites in their eyes. Their ears are going to sort of be pulled back in a stiff position. Mm-hmm. And their tongue is going to be stiff and usually out directly in front of them. If Mikey was cool and chill and he was just trying to cool off because it was a hot day, he would have this big spatula tongue, right? His tongue would be wide and maybe even lolling from one side of his mouth, right? And everybody can imagine that, right? When you're talking about a lolling tongue, you're imagining a golden retriever with a big fat tongue hanging out the side of their mouths because they just played 20 minutes of fetch.
Well, and for the most part, when they are in that state and like they just played fetch, their ears aren't stiff,
right?
Their facial features are kind of relaxed because they're like
I feel good because they're enjoying the endorphins, right? So they're in a very comfortable, happy state, and you can see it in their eye set, in their ear set, in the actual shape of their tongue, where their tongue is coming out of their mouths. This is not Mikey. Mikey was stressed in all of his
skin's pulled back, everything. His eyes are open, his head is darting side to side, his tongue is straight out, his ears are back,
and he's literally shaking
all over the place
because he's not comfortable in this strange environment. And this woman, I'm sure, had all good intentions. She is trying to, quote, socialize him, which you and I would say, this is not socialization.
No, he's over threshold, so this was never going to be
it's just a negative experience. Yes. From start, middle, end. Totally negative for poor Mikey. So the woman with the little boy looks at him, at the dog, and the older woman, Mikey's owner, says, "Do you want to say hi to him? He's very friendly." And the mom says, "Okay, you can go say hi." And the woman then tries to put Mikey in a sit, and he's just locking his legs, and she tries to turn his butt to the child so the child won't get jumped on. And the kid takes about 2 steps towards the dog, and the mom says, "Oh, never mind. Mikey doesn't want to say hi to you. Come back here." And I was super glad about that because I did not want to get involved in that. And I would have been uncomfortable saying to that mom, I wouldn't let your 4-year-old say hi to that dog. I didn't want to be in that.
No. And I'm always visually watching people who are like greeting 2 dogs together or having a kid go to a dog that I know is stressed out. My eye is always there because I'm ready to jump in there and have to break that dog off of that kid or off of another dog because that's just how we work. Because we're always looking at body language.
And I don't want to be the busybody know-it-all. No. I don't
want to be involved. Don't do it.
And I don't want to be
People
telling that
can't help
mom
it.
what's right and
Yep,
wrong for
it's
her
her
kid.
kid.
I don't want to be telling that pet owner what's right and wrong for her dog. She doesn't know me from Adam. I could be some idiot who doesn't know anything about dogs.
I try not to get involved, but in situations where there's a kid, I'm always my eyes.
I didn't think
always-
Mikey was going to hurt him, but I thought Mikey might snap at him out of fear. I didn't think the kid was in mortal danger. Had that child been bitten when I was sitting there watching and I didn't say anything, that's what your mind goes, right? What is my responsibility there? But fortunately, I didn't have to say anything.
Didn't have to do
the
anything.
mom was like, "Come back." Mikey doesn't want to say hi. Mikey doesn't feel so comfortable. Now,
Thank you for reading the social cues, lady.
she should have read that before even telling her kid. But the kid, he was very well behaved. Most 4-year-olds would just not listen.
Yeah.
Just 4-year-olds nowadays. But that little boy was very polite and listened very well and came back to his mom. And the mom just quietly explained to him that, Mikey seems a little nervous. And she changed the subject and it was all good. Now Mikey and his owner walk a little bit farther and they're now walking by the 3 women in their 50s eating their ice cream. 2 white women, 1 black woman. And the reason I say that...
Important reason.
For all of you who don't know, my husband is black, okay? So...
we have a lot of these conversations in our house.
Culturally, black people have a different... come from a different point of view with dogs than white people. And you can historically look at the reasons why.
Yes.
Every understanding why they do that. It's completely clear. The 2 white women struck up a conversation with Mikey's owner. The black woman never said a word and never wanted anything to do with this dog.
She was eating her ice cream.
She wanted nothing to do with this dog. She was certainly standing there nice and polite, but she was not interested in making conversation about the dog or going near the dog. Now, whether she didn't like dogs, I don't know. Whether she was afraid of dogs, I don't know. Whether she was reading Mikey's body language and making that judgment, I don't know. I just know that she was not involved in this. And the 2 white women were, talking to Mikey's owner about him and saying things like he needs to be socialized. Is he afraid? Was he abused? And that whole conversation. And then one of the women squatted down and put her hand out to Mikey, who just wanted to freaking leave.
He just wanted to go home, man.
He was literally pulling at the end of the leash away from these people. Mikey just wanted to leave. And I just was under my breath quietly speaking to your dad as we're sitting there, like narrating the entire thing.
But to be fair, that's just what we do. I can't help it. It's the same thing. And that's why, me and my girlfriend talk about this all the time because she's a dog person too. It's like every single time we see some sort of crazy interaction, we're like, can you believe that? Blah, 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 blah. Because our brains, that's just how our brains work. I can't turn it off,
I mean, I think that the woman who squatted down to say hi to Mikey made herself small.
Good intentions.
I guess, yeah. And I would not make myself small to a dog who was that stressed. I would just not interact at all because you don't know. You have no idea what Mikey's experiences are and where he's willing to go out of how scared he is.
Out of fear. Fear can drive a dog, to do
any dog is
things.
capable of anything if they're under enough stress.
Yeah, and he was obviously under a lot of stress.
Your dad said to me, "You're not working, turn off," because I just was narrating the entire thing. And I just laughed and I said, well, I can't turn off.
Yeah, I can't turn off
this
either.
whole thing is just upsetting to me. And it's all with good intentions. Like Mikey's owner was trying to do the right thing. The mom with the son wanted to do the right thing. The mom, the woman who squatted down was trying to do the right thing. These are all good people who are trying to make this dog comfortable.
But did not read any social cues, which is the whole topic.
And then when you talk about a dog who then gets these experiences over and over again of humans not listening to them,
then they have to take matters into their own hands.
that's when the anxiety comes out, right? No one's listening to me, so I'm either going to shut down or I'm going to turn on in a way that we don't want. Or I'm just going to melt into a puddle of anxiety and it's going to come out in all kinds of behavioral problems. So I think listening to your dog and respecting their cues and body language as nonverbal communication just in your house. A lot of times we want to pet our dogs and they don't want to be bothered at the moment. And I think that we have sort of sort of believe that dogs are there for us, right? They've been created for our entertainment and our, joy. And we sort of bulldoze over them when they're saying, please give me space.
Yeah. Like I always think, imagine if I always put myself in the dog's shoes of like, imagine if I was saying like everything like I didn't like, okay. So there's this video the other day and there's this guy at the dog park and he was obviously a trainer and I don't know if he had a body cam or if he was videotaping with his phone, but there are these kids running around the dog park after this little dog and the little dog is like running away and they're chasing the dog and no one's saying anything. And then the little dog goes over and then sits down and turns his back to the kids and then the kids like grab his ears and stuff and he runs away again and then he ends up going underneath his owner and is like, Dad, please,
that owner?
Dad. And the owner is standing there having a conversation with someone and these kids are reaching underneath the owner's and they're getting into the dog's face, grabbing his face and putting their face on their face. That is a dog that is going to bite your kids in the face. That is a dog. Your kid should not be in a dog park if they don't understand body language. And you taught me and Jacob at a super young age not to go into like Isaac's face or go into Finn's face or whoever their face. You were very much to like respect their body language. Do you see how he's running away? Do you see this? Do you see that? These kids had no idea. And I don't blame the kids. But like the owner, like the dog's underneath your legs asking for you to help him. And now you guys just ruined a bit of your relationship because you didn't defend your dog. And the guy on the camera is like, please get your kids out of their face, blah, blah, blah. And then of course the guy's like, well, he's never bit anyone before. And I'm like, well, there's no day like the present.
Yeah. He hasn't bitten anybody yet.
Come on.
And like, do we want to push him to that point? It's just so unfair to the dog. And if I were that dog, I'd be like, okay, this is the guy who feeds me and in whose house I live, but I don't have much feeling beyond that. Dogs bond to you when they trust you. And a dog who doesn't have their boundaries respected by their owner, it can't be a dog that trusts you, right? They have to trust when they say, no. Now, of course, there are times when we do have to say, I'm sorry, this is non-negotiable. I need to clip your toenails. You're giving me all the signals that you don't want me to do this, but this is something that we have to do, or we have to restrain you at the vet or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say at the vet, you have a great routine with Deacon and Journey and you're like, don't touch their heads. I will lift their ears. I'll lift their eyes. I'll lift their teeth for you. I'll do all that stuff around the head. But you can touch everywhere else except for the head. And you just have their head in your hands and you let them do a full body exam. And this is something you have to do. And you're going to get rewarded for this. And that is a way that you can, I don't know.
Right. I mean, that's part of the reason that we have 9 dogs. We laugh about this, right? Because there's always somebody who wants attention. If I had one dog, I mean, half the time that dog really wants to be left alone. They love you a lot, but that doesn't mean that they want you to wake them up and shower them with kisses when they're just taking a nice nap in the sun. So I don't have to do that with mine because we got so many.
And they rotate.
They do.
So it's fine.
And that's an interesting one, right? I mean, they do have a limit. So they'll come if I sit on the stool at the island in the kitchen, which is where I work on my laptop. I should take a long video.
Time lapse.
A time lapse over the first 2 hours of my day, because basically every dog will come and spend a little time with me and then move away and go lay down. And then another one will come and they sort of do this whole routine. And there's certainly times when I communicate to them that I'm not interested in your interaction. And I expect them
to respect yours.
To respect my space and my boundaries. So of course, I'm going to try to do that for them. This is not something that we considered 30 years ago.
No.
And I think what I find most interesting, and I think this is why I wanted to talk about this topic, is that when I got back into official dog training rather than just training my own dogs and all that stuff in the last 5-6 years, I started learning about the new science that's come about, some of them being specific dog body language studies that they've done, right? Shaking it off. I mean, it's so obvious now when you see it, right? 20 years ago, nobody knew that. Like nobody was talking about that. There is an old Cesar Millan video from probably 20, 25 years ago when he first started, where the dog where he's at the house and the dog goes and drinks the water. Do you remember that video? It's
Are
fascinating.
you talking about the lab? Or are you talking
No,
about...
not that one.
Okay,
I don't want to talk about that one. He made a million mistakes, and he would be the first one, I think, to tell you he made a million mistakes in that video. He went to the house. I don't remember what kind of dog it was, but it was a dog who had some aggression issues, was being nasty to people, but not really an aggressive dog, right? And, he was, doing that thing that he does, which, that's really outdated at this point. But what the dog did was went and started drinking water. And they timed it, and it went on and on and on for minutes and minutes and minutes. This dog was drinking. Now, some might look at that and say the dog has a kidney issue.
Or the dog's really, why is your dog really thirsty?
Yeah. But, and now, and he did say, oh, this is an interesting behavior. Of course, now a dog trainer would look at that and go, okay, that's classic displacement.
Yep, he's
right?
displacing, yep.
Right, he's feeling anxious, and he's trying to regulate by getting away from the situation and doing something else, right? We saw that today on our walk.
Yep.
And I loved it. So displacement isn't always a bad thing. So we have a client here right now, and she's a bit dog reactive.
Yeah, it's really, if you let her hyper focus on it, she can get reactive. But for the most part, if you give her any alternate behavior, she will happily take the alternate behavior instead. And so what she was doing today is she's a big smeller, but we don't really let them stop and smell. So they have to continue smelling, or they have to smell a spot up there and then have to kind of like, once that 4-foot leash ends from front to back, then they have to continue walking. And when we were passing a dog today, instead of her looking at me and like getting cookies, she decided that she was going to smell the grass instead.
Yeah, so I watched her from behind. I was walking behind you. She would look at the dog, sort of, not totally turn her head, sort of look at the dog, try to process that, stay under control. And this was out without you saying anything, which I thought was a great thing. So she would look at the dog, obviously start to feel anxious, and then she would put her head down and sniff, 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 sniff. And then she would sort of take another peek at the dog and sniff, 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 sniff. That is a great technique that she has learned to deal with her anxiety, right? It's a displacement behavior, which is fascinating. I wish I had caught it on video.
I know, but this is what I'm talking about when it comes to like, this is going to kind of go back to a little bit of last episode with the e-collars. A lot of the times people will be like, my dog's reactive, I don't know what to do. And then trainers come and they're like, use an e-collar. They should be looking at you the entire time. This is a great example of a dog that does not need to look at you to be able to self-regulate.
Right.
I let her do what she was going to do. I saw that her hackles were going up a little bit, but I gave her a nice loose leash. I gave her the opportunity to make a good decision. And if she didn't make a good decision, then I was going to correct it and then bring out the cookies and start giving her an alternate a behavior to do. But she didn't need me. She already was self-regulating. And in those cases where they're like, they have to look at you, they don't need to look at you. They do not need to. No, if she is self-regulating herself, this is what I want. I want her to be able to pull herself together.
Because who can better tell her how to feel better than herself?
Exactly.
She's in her own body.
Exactly.
She knows how she feels. And if she can figure out a way to get through this situation that makes her a little uncomfortable in a way that's socially appropriate,
I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So, and then after you walk by, here's a cookie. Great job. Continue on your walk.
Yep.
I loved that behavior.
Yep. I gave her a handful of cookies. I said, nice job. And then she shook it off. And
yes, and
walking.
then she shook.
She literally shook off all the anxiety, all the tension that she was feeling. And we kept walking and it was a normal walk.
Yeah, it was
That's
great.
That's exactly what I want.
So these are the situations where as a trainer, it's so nuanced. I said to you, I think you still had Dozer in your hand. Didn't you? Yeah. So normally we only walk one reactive dog at a time. So you had Dozer who is not reactive and this dog Willow. And then I had Tula on with me. And normally when we would come upon a dog, when you have a reactive dog, I will take the non-reactive one so you can completely focus.
Yeah.
In this case, you were like, you know what? I want to see where she's at.
Yep.
So I'm not going to even tighten up I'm not going to take the second handle on the leash.
I didn't take the slack off the leash. I didn't
ask her to do anything.
Nope. I just let her kind of
because we really want to again look at that nonverbal language and determine where she is on the scale of reactivity and what we have to work on, right? Had she exploded, that would have given us information.
And
it
like,
wouldn't
okay,
have been corrected so much. It would have been just shake it off, literally, for us. Shrug your shoulders and go, okay, I see where we're at.
We're not there yet.
Yep, now we got to backtrack a little bit. So all this stuff is super nuanced, which is the same with Tula in Tractor Supply, right? All of those behaviors, I have to turn my ears off because I get so offended easily by people who don't know what they're looking at and say offensive things to me because I'm sensitive and it's not actually what's happening.
You get reactive.
I do. Because I just want to shake them and go, that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
But, if I turn my ears off and I can analyze the situation as a trainer and as her owner, who knows her better than anybody, and determine whether that was a successful visit. And until I broke it down for somebody, an observer, I'd have to break that down and say where you are. So that's what we do when we're working with reactive dogs. So Will has only been with us halfway, for a week and a half. So she's only halfway through her training. And I loved that nonverbal behavior that gave us so many clues as to where she's at psychologically in this situation.
She's much farther than I thought she was.
And to go to that old, they have to look at me, I hate that crap.
Yeah, I really, really
Now,
hate
some
it.
dogs really do prefer that.
I mean, we have, having an Australian Shepherd, for a fact that that's what they do. That they're bred to make eye contact with you. They're bred to look at you for directions. And that's what herding breeds are bred for. So when I'm working with, she's supposed to be like an Australian Shepherd pity mix, but she has hound in her, and I think the reason that is why she's so smelly. So I let her do what I thought her natural behavior was, which was smelling. And I'm going to let her do that behavior to self-regulate herself rather than look at me, which is a very Aussie thing. So this is when we talk a lot about breed body language and breed behavior and stuff like that. You have to take in account that we don't really know what she's mixed with, but she's showing signs of a hound, or she's showing signs of a herding breed, or she's showing signs of a terrier.
And we go with that. You got to train the dog that's in front of you. And you got to observe their nonverbal communication and then make decisions based on that. So trainers who will say to you, you must do this in every case, is either a trainer who's not very good or a trainer who doesn't have the experience to understand that every dog's an individual and there's a period of learning their personality traits as well as their breed traits. And we got to work with them because personality and breed traits are not changeable, people.
Yep.
You know this. We drill this into your heads. They're not changeable. It's hardwired. So we got to figure out a way to work with them and flow nicely forward.
And sometimes, a lot of the times, people will stop because their dog's reactive and stop and put them in a sit and put their back towards the dog and do all this stuff, which is, if your dog's fearful of another dog, you turning their back to this thing that they're scared of and putting them in a submissive position towards this object that they're scared of is not going to help the problem. It's going to exacerbate the problem. It's going to be like, this is exactly what you're scared of. Therefore, I'm going to put you in a weak position to make you not reactive.
Well, if I see a monster, I'm not turning my back to the monster.
I know. I'm not turning my back to the monster.
I want to know where that dude is.
That's my other frustrating part with that type of, people are really trying to do right.
That being said, there are some dogs who
do better.
The alternate behavior they have developed is, I'm happy to sit and stare at your face, and I don't want to walk. Some dogs, when you're working with reactive dogs and you're walking by another dog, sometimes the movement of walking can be stimulating and make the reactivity worse. It's pretty unusual, I find, but some dogs, a minority of dogs, do better stopping and being offered an alternative.
We've had a handful of dogs that
where you're just feeding and they're either standing there or sitting or doing whatever. Most dogs do better when you keep moving, but not all. So to say I want you to turn your back to and look and stare at me in the face is not really a great technique. It doesn't even make sense when you break it down as a human.
No.
If you're talking about Deacon, he was severely leash reactive.
Yeah.
And now he is so into the freaking treats, he will trip you because he's sort of bending around you, looking up at your face, looking for that treat. And he'll happily ignore the dog. Happily.
Yep.
and stare at you in the face. I didn't ask him to do that. That's what he wants to do.
Well, and once again, let's look at the breed.
Right.
He's an Aussie that they like looking at you. They like directions. They like knowing what their job is. Deacon knows exactly what his job is and he knows how to do it. Where, other dogs don't. Like, I mean, I could talk about my girlfriend's dog and, Eli has a hard time. He's a terrier. So he gets locked on to another dog. And then once he's in that lizard brain, you can't turn him off. So you might as well just let him bark at the end of the leash and let him do his thing because you're never going to be able to get him back to your attention. Mm-hmm. And so I recommended for her to get super high value treats. So when he does see another dog, he's so orally, what do you call a nose? He's like
olfactory,
whatever. It doesn't make any sense. He's so focused on smelling on the treats that he can look at the dog and then come back to you and get a treat for that. Like, he really needs a high value treat to be able to get that terrier locking off so he can proceed through the walk. And that's been working for her pretty well with him.
And with a dog like that, occasionally they're going to explode.
Yeah, and
it's just par for the course. You just have to shake it off and go, okay.
Not a great walk today.
Break down the situation and analyze the situation so you could maybe avoid it next time. But failure is part of learning. It. No one's perfect. Your dogs aren't perfect. You aren't perfect. And, a small percentage of failure should be completely acceptable in these situations. We like to say that with age, maturity, exposure, desensitization, that dogs mellow with the reactivity, right? You get the good training under your belt. You continue forward with that good training. And as they mature, they mellow, just like people do. But not all dogs.
No.
Not all dogs. I imagine I will still be treating Deacon when he's 13 years old walking by a dog.
I think it's a bloodline thing.
It's such a small thing to do. It's almost like he enjoys it. Like he knows exactly, there's a dog. I know exactly what you want me to do here. And I'm so fine with that. Obviously, I would raise him differently now. Tula does not have any reactivity with dogs on leash, but I have seen the beginnings of it with the barking because she's at a developmental stage where she's at
a fear stage.
Yeah, she's pretty fractious. If something spooks her, then she starts to bark.
And then that's self-rewarding because,
Yeah, so I'm very careful with her. We're still doing the treats and, still trying to be super calm and still exposing her and making sure she's walking with the right dog. So I'm not going to walk her with a super reactive dog, which is just going to set her off. Making sure that we need to get through this stage.
And as much positive
avoiding her reacting. My goal is to prevent her from reacting. And if that means I need to avoid dogs for a period of time, maybe for the next couple of months, if I need to cross the street and make a ridiculous amount of space, then that's what I need to do to get her through this developmental stage. Right. And I think that people forget that part of it, that these behaviors in the first 2 years of life, there's a developmental milestones, and avoidance can be temporary. And once they grow up, or get a little bit older or come out of that stage, we can then re-expose them to those situations. So it's not permanent. People forget that part.
I think a lot of the times people are like exposure, socialization, exposure. And in reality, it's how many positive situations are you having when you go to Home Depot?
Right. How many times have I taken her to a store? Maybe 6 times in her whole life. Maybe. Probably not even that many times.
And how many of those times has she had a positive experience in those stores?
So she hasn't been to a store probably for 2 months. And again, I've only taken her less than a handful of times altogether. So it was I was not surprised at her response, that she was very chill about it. I was pleased, but not terribly surprised. Had it all fallen apart and she had started barking for the moment we got out of the car, I probably would have put her back in the car, left her in the crate with the windows down and gone in the store by myself. I would have said, she's not in a headspace.
She's giving me body language that today is not the day.
So when she got out of the car with Mikey and he's shaking and nervous, she should have gotten back in the car and driven away or walked away. I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing her get in a car. So maybe she lived locally and she just walked to there. You have to be willing to do that. Even if you like carve out a time and make time to take them to this particular thing to desensitize them, socialize them. And you get there and the dog's like, I'm not having this today. And you're like, well, I'm here. I might as well do it. No.
Let's make it, that's as many positive experiences we can get, because that one negative experience could cancel out 10 positive experiences.
It's just freaking plain cruel.
Well, yeah.
It's just cruel.
And people don't see it that way.
They don't, and they mean well.
It's frustrating.
And she meant well, and she was trying to do right by that dog. And I'm sure she's a lovely person. But that was a upsetting experience for poor Mikey. And it breaks my heart when I see that, because it's so avoidable. And it's just so avoidable, with maybe a little bit of education. Although sometimes you can educate people and they just refuse to see. I mean, we know people who...
A lot of people.
Who bulldoze right over their own dog's body language and do things like pick them up and turn them over. And the dog is looking at you like, I don't want to be picked up. I don't want to be on my back.
Oh.
And the person's going, he loves it. He loves... No, he doesn't, dude.
I have a good one. I have a very good one. I've told you this one already, and I already yelled at him about it. But my two best friends, we go to my friend's Nick's house, and he has 2 mixed breeds. They're both lab mixes.
Lab mixes, yeah.
And one of them is older and she's sweet as the day is long, and the other one is young and he has a lot of energy, but he's very well behaved. He just is so excited. He's one of those dogs that he wags his tail so hard that he hits it on stuff and sometimes it bleeds.
Yeah, he's a sweet boy.
He's just a sweet boy.
But just a lot of energy.
A lot of energy.
Again, developmentally, he's still young.
Very young. And so Nick was watching them because his parents went on vacation, and he came back. He works a full day of work, and then he went over to his grandparents' house to have dinner. So the dogs were like left home alone for a big majority of the day when they're used to being out. Frank works in his office all day, so he's used to being with the dogs all day, and Nick, was working. So
right. the dogs were alone all day.
And I came over because we usually hang out every Friday, and the dogs were like extra all over the place. And I was just like, dogs all over the place, where they must be excited to see you. And I was like, your parents not home? And he goes, oh yeah, they're on vacation. I was like, well, maybe they need to go outside and like run around for a little bit. And he goes, yeah, they haven't really been out all day. Which I think he let them out before he went to his grandparents' house, but they needed to obviously run. Mm-hmm. So he let them outside. They're running around like lunatics. He has a huge yard. So I was like, why don't we just stay outside and have a fire pit and let them run around outside? And so that's what we did. We talked and hung out and they ran around or whatever. We came back inside and Quinn was still all over the place. And at this point, I think he got most of his energy out, but it was like anxiety kind of like buildup of my mom and dad aren't home and I'm with you guys and I don't really know what to do. So I don't know. He finally, after like an hour and a half of hanging out there, he finally settled next to Harley on the bed.
Oh no, I see where this is going.
And Matt gets up and goes over to him and says, oh my God, you're being such a good boy. And starts like shaking him and putting all this energy into him. Right. And I was like, Matthew, stop. He just settled down. Stop it. And then all of a sudden, Quinn gets up and starts running around just like he was running before. Matt's like, oh, I don't know what I did wrong. I was like, you literally went like this. And I went up to him and did exactly what I did to Quinn. I started rubbing his head and pushing him around. And Matt's like, oh, I guess I did give him a little bit of energy. I was like, you think? You think maybe the dog just calmed down after being anxious and he's home with us and you just gave him a whole bunch of endorphins?
People make those mistakes all the time.
I was like, just leave him alone.
And we work really hard with our clients to point that out.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the behaviors that we see come from a misunderstanding of what they need and what they're getting from us. Right? And what we're doing that's causing the behaviors that are I don't even want to say that we don't like. I like to go back to behaviors that are incompatible with the happy life with us and the dog. All right. This is going to be the season finale.
Yep.
Season 2 finale. We did come back and do this one more episode because I just had an itch to talk about nonverbal communication.
Yep.
If you're watching on YouTube, this studio is going to be broken down as soon as we're done and packed up in boxes because we're hopefully going to be moving in like 2 weeks. Still waiting for the closing date, but it's coming up for sure.
Yep.
So we're packing up and we'll do season 2 once we're settled in the new house, probably this winter sometime.
Yep.
Season 3, sorry. So this is going to be the season finale, but I did want to talk about this topic because Mikey got me all worked up.
Yeah, poor Mikey. Poor Mikey. God bless Mikey.
All right, so that's it for episode 10, season 2. Thank you guys for listening to us this season. It's been fun. We've learned some stuff being on video. We're going to have a new studio when we move to the new house. It's going to be a permanent studio upstairs. So we'll try to get a little fancier and come up with some new topics and guests. And I had all these guests lined up for this season, but because it's summer, everybody was so busy.
Yeah, in the winter, I think it will be better.
People will have more time, I think, after the holidays and whatnot, and we'll get some new interviewees to come in because the interviews are always interesting and fun. Of course, reaching out and letting us know what topics our clients, listeners would like to we'd like to hear. We're always open to that. So that's it for Dog for Thought season 2 in the can. Ba-boom. We will see you guys next season on Dog for Thought. Bye. Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.